Why are you running again?
The city is divided into two Toledos. It's not divided because people want it to be two Toledos. There's a part of Toledo and West Toledo, and Monroe Street would very much characterize all the way from Old Orchard out toward Sylvania as a very um, affluent, safe, attractive, and a great deal of commerce. Uh, that characterizes the one Toledo, and the other Toledo would be a lot of East Toledo, a lot of North End, some of South Toledo coming out toward Walbridge Park on Broadway from downtown Toledo, and there hasn't been city oversight, city attention to the alleys, to the parks. More recently, after Councilwoman Celia Adams came up with a program to really beef up the staff in the parks and offer programs for young people. Um, Even though the mayor opposed her plan, um, they have hired some people, but nowhere near enough to work in those parks. High school leaders, young men and women that are not just athletes, but good students, active in student body, conscientious about their homework. There's lots of those young men and women that come from the various, both the private schools like Maumee Valley and Central Catholic and St. John's and St. Francis, Notre Dame, St. Ursula, Toledo Christian School. A lot of good young men and women that would be excellent leaders, motivators, and teachers in our park systems during the summertime. There's simply not enough respect nor money in terms of government services being directed to help those that are challenged. And I've spent most of my life being an advocate for the system treating challenged persons and neighborhoods respectfully.
The city is dealing with a significant rise in gun violence. We're seeing more and more shootings happening at events where even kids are there. So what are you going to do to address this recent rise in gun violence? Although there has been concern because you have suggested hiring more police officers, although even every time the city does that, we still see this rise in gun violence. So what other solutions do you have?
Well, I have a 10-point program, but I know this 10-point program works because we had a period of a lot of drive-by shootings, wounding innocent people, waiting at bus stops back in the late 90s. And in particular, one particular summer, it became a part of the gangs then were known as the Bloods and the Crips. And initiation and promotion within the Bloods and Crips required you to shoot somebody sitting at a bus stop waiting for a bus. We lost about 6 or 7 people within about 10 days to 2 weeks in the late 70s. In the late 90s, I beg your pardon, late 90s. And I brought my police chief over and I said, Chief, what's going on? Well, he said there's blips like this periodically, bad times, but then it'll slow down and we'll have good times for a while. And I said, well, I'm not going to base my protection of citizens upon where we are in the blip. So we, that day, came up with a plan, and that plan was to unite TPD, that's Toledo Police Department, the sheriff of Lucas County, and the Ohio Highway Patrol that was assigned to Northwest Ohio. And we doubled, in some cases tripled, the number of police cars going into challenged neighborhoods where this gun violence was taking place back then in the 90s. And I promised the clergymen that I would ride with the police officers. I said, council members will also, you clergymen may ride along also. We are not going to take people's rights away from anybody. We are going to take weapons and drugs away from folks who are basically putting up a sign that says, you know, we've got guns, we've got drugs, come and get us. And believe me, they can be that arrogant. Usually not Toledo until recently, but Detroit and other cities, Chicago, Southside Chicago, they can be pretty arrogant about saying, take us on. Well, we went 89 days without another murder in the city of Toledo. We swung into action with the collective TPD, Sheriff, and Ohio Highway Patrol. We had help, a little bit of help from the FBI and alcohol, tobacco, and firearms out of the federal government too, but that started the Friday night before Labor Day. We did not have another murder until the day before Thanksgiving in our city. Now, you can't just do that though. I think the curfew still is important. There are certain kids, and I don't blame it on the kids, it's mom and dad and mom, that are letting them be out way beyond when they should, particularly sometimes in unsafe neighborhoods. The curfew law needs to be enforced. We need to boost our block watch programs. We had a couple hundred block watch programs, we're down to 20. We need to boost our block watch programs up dramatically. Get the citizens involved. We've got a lot of money in the city, $190 million. Let's use some of that money by doubling and tripling the reward you get for leading to the arrest of a person. Or if you turn in a gun that you found, or somebody in the household found it, pay it. Let's pay whatever it takes to get that gun out of circulation and off the streets. The final analysis, and then the jobs for young people. Not only summertime, but after school, once school resumes in the fall. A combination of all of those is what is needed, but we must understand that I don't care where you live in the world, there are protectors of the average citizen, and those protectors must be allowed to do their job. No excuses for behavior that violates not only the civil rights, but the personal property and health of a citizen. No question there's no place for it. On the other hand, anybody who recommends that the police departments be eliminated is obviously never run a city. You eliminate the police departments in cities, and you're going to have a lot more chaos and crime, and that will impact both blacks, whites, and Hispanic. All of the above will be included in what's going to happen. You've got to have the men and women that wear blue uniforms visible. You've got to put them in harm's way, which is where the gangs are hanging out, the blocks and the neighborhoods are hanging out. And my experience is that worked, and the crime dropped dramatically when we got increased police presence in the neighborhoods where most of the violence was coming out of.
Your critics have criticized a lot of your policies, a lot of the controversies you had in your office, even your age for running again in office. What is your response to all these criticisms of you, and why should Toledoans put you back in office?
First of all, if you're going to be a leader, no matter what you do as a leader, there will be days where people think you're a hero, and there will be days where people think you're certainly a lot less than a hero and a dunce. That's human nature, is to be critical of people that are in positions of responsibility, authority, power, and I welcome that, surprisingly, because where there's truth in the criticism, I know I need to make a change in course, and I also think that people are interested enough to let you know what's going wrong, or at least going wrong in their neighborhood, our people need to pay attention to that. I need to pay attention to that because they're probably onto something that they're experiencing even before I saw it, and it needs attention. But you cannot worry about, I'm reading a book right now by Doris Kearns, Godwin Kearns. She's written on the 4 presidents in her lifetime that she thought were the most impactful, not popular, impactful. And they were, in no particular order, the 2 Roosevelts. FDR, story of FDR the day he died, true story, my history professor at Dennis University told me. He was working on the docks in San Francisco, and the sailors that got off the boats that were coming in that day were crying because of the death of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He had been their leader in World War II, and they were crying. Later in that day, he got up to the Fairmont Hotel restaurant, one of the nicest restaurants in San Francisco, and was having dinner, and there was a little old white-haired lady at the next table saying that SOB Roosevelt finally got what he deserved. You can't worry about the fact that people are entitled to their perspectives. You only need to worry about, are you or are you not doing a job for those who need help, support, encouragement along the way. So, being a doer, and I am a doer, to get things done, since I left being mayor of the city of Toledo, 3 things I've been involved in. I never stopped working for Toledo. The city was going to sell its water system. The most valuable asset most cities have is their water and sewer system. Ours had a value of about $1.5 billion, has a value. There was almost everybody in Toledo wanted that system sold to the suburbs. My take on that in part was that the suburban communities might have thought that their largely Caucasian utilities departments could do a better job, a more efficient job of running Toledo's water and sewer system. But I knew the system was worth $1.5 billion, and the suburbs were going to offer us $250 million. I believe that's about 1/6 of the value of our water and sewer system. Everybody was for it. The Chamber of Commerce was for it. The Toledo Blade was for it. The mayors were for it. County commissioners were for it. But the only person against it was myself, Ray Wood, the president of the NAACP, and Steve Kowalik, the president of the ASME labor union. But we took them on, and we beat the establishment. And the new mayor, Kapsakevich, who initially had signed on board to sell it also, we convinced him that it was a terrible deal, and at the end of the day, we now have a system that is still owned by the city of Toledo, still managed by the city of Toledo, but there is a board on it that includes representatives of regional communities. So I think we got the best of both worlds. We got input from the suburbs in terms of how we can run it as efficiently as possible, but we own it. And it's a huge resource that Toledoans want to continue to hold on to. That was done as a private citizen. Never earned a penny. Just felt like it was a bad deal and it needed to be halted in its tracks, and we halted it in its tracks. There's a hospital close by, UTMC it's referred to as. The president of the University of Toledo, she's no longer there, decided that it was time to sell UTMC. 22,000 people work over there as nurses, and another 400 or so as doctors. It is the hospital of South Toledo. In West Toledo, you've got Toledo Hospital, you've got St. Anne's Hospital, you've got Flower Hospital, and even in the inner part of the West Toledo corridor, you have St. Vincent Mercy Hospital. So you got 4 hospitals over there. We have 1 here. And and I led it, charged with include Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur that we've been talking about, State Senator Fetter, and we fought vigorously to persuade the board of the University of Toledo that it was not a wise move, that we had a lot of investment over here, lots of buildings, nice campus. Finally, a new president came to the University of Toledo. He agreed with us, took the hospital off the sale. They were projecting it would lose $25 million in the year 2020. It made $17 million in the year 2020. So people take numbers and they tilt them to support their position, but the facts were we actually made $17 million over here at UTMC. So those were just a couple of things that after I left office I've worked upon. Also was a chairman of the board of Connecting Kids to Meals, which feeds a lot of children that wouldn't get meals. I'm on the board of a Padua Center, which helps inner city children in the Junction community. The the finance director of the Padua Center. So I'm here, and I'm alive. And the only comment I will make about my age is there's three icons that in terms of the music world that I think of. I think of Dolly Parton in her late 70s right now. I think of country western. I think of Cher, who I saw on television the other night, looking great in her 80s. And I think particularly because of the energy she had of Tina Turner singing at the Palladium in England with 350 to 400,000 people watching. She's up there on a high bridge about 60 feet above everybody below her, and she's rocking at age 70. She's older than that today, but that was a decade ago probably. Nobody said these girls can't do it, because they can do it. Chronologically, it is important to take good care of yourself, which I've done. Just came back from a Pilates workout this morning, and frankly and candidly, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, I could probably run circles around the incumbent mayor who's, well, quite a bit younger than I am. But I'm certain that went out and ran a race, it wouldn't even be close. And so I'll just simply say the energy is here. More important than the energy and the age, the fire in the belly to make a difference. And my approach to that is, God has kept me alive this long. He wants me to be useful. He doesn't want me sitting in front of a TV set drinking lemonade or something stronger 5 days or 6 days a week. He wants me making a difference in the world. I just finished reading some of the Greco-Roman, Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. You know, the average age of those gentlemen from the old Greco-Roman Empire, I'd say about 84. They lived back in those days. They ate healthy and they exercised. The Greeks and the Romans started the Olympics basically, but they exercised and they ate healthy. And these men who wrote these beautiful books about our lives there were a couple that were in their 70s, one in his 60s when he passed away. I've got many volumes of about 20 different authors, but an awful lot of them were 84, 85, 86, into the 90s, and they were still writing, very important works about the human life and what the human life is capable of doing.
The city is working to allocate over $100 million worth of federal funds. The city already has their own proposal about how they believe, or the administration, I should say, has their own list of priorities they have and think should be allocated from this $180 million. And then they also have these different meetings they're having with citizens about how they believe this money should be spent. How do you think it should be spent?
One correction. You've done your homework on everything, but I want to make, the city has 189 million. The county has about 100, and the Toledo public school system has another 100. So you're looking at darn near $400 million. First of all, the city needs to improve its work effort in the challenged neighborhoods. We do not need two Toledos. We just don't need that. Anytime you've got a West Bank and an East Bank, Palestine, you have problems. You have problems. Nobody wants to live where there's no money and there's gunfire and there's blight. And I don't care where in the world you might be, if your community's divided in half, here's the have-nots and here's the haves, and most people are scrambling to get to where the haves are. Well, we've got people that are proud to live in East Toledo. Their families have lived over there, gone to Wade High School for years, and we're letting the absentee landlord, because we do not have enough inspectors to go out and check all the homes over there. We do not have park personnel anywhere near what we once had taking care of our parks. So first, the city needs to make sure it has personnel to work with the citizens of the challenged neighborhoods and get them cleaned up.